Hello and welcome back to Unbound Voices, the gender podcast, a space where we hold honest conversations about healing, justice, and the work of rebuilding communities from the inside out. My name is Atini Magodla and I am your host once again. And today we're closing off the year with a deeply reflective, heartfelt episode. As 2025 comes to an end, we're taking a moment to slow down, a moment to breathe, and to look back at what this year has meant for those working in mental health and psychosocial support across South Africa. So today we are joined by Lethabo and Zanele. Lethabo and Zanele, could you kindly introduce yourself? Maybe Zanele, we can start with you.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name, like Atini has introduced, Zanele Zondo. I am a social worker. I'm also a mental health and psychosocial support practitioner at CSVR. And yeah, my work sits in the community, support groups, one-on-one sessions, and collective space where people can breathe again. So yeah.
Thanks, Zanele, and welcome to the podcast. Hi, Lethabo.
Hi, Atini. Hi, everyone. My name is Lethabo Mutlou. I am also a social worker and a mental health and psychosocial support professional at the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation, basically working with individuals, groups, and communities within Southern Africa.
Thanks, Lethabo. Lethabo and Zanele are two individuals who have spent this year holding space for trauma, healing, and transformation within communities and extensively. Today's episode is titled Reflections on Healing, What 2025 Taught Us About Mental Health and, of course, Resilience. Today's episode is more conversational and it's about the emotional landscape of this year, the labor of care work, and what gives us hope moving into 2026. So, ladies, once again, welcome. Let's begin. So, maybe we can start by honoring what this year, and what we've lived throughout this year. Some of the challenges, the moments of beauty, and emotional undercurrents, that shaped 2025. 2025 has been a demanding year across the communities CSVR serves. What moments stand out for you when you think about the emotional and psychological landscape of this year? Perhaps, Lethabo, we can start with you.
Thanks so much, Atini, for that question. Yeah, indeed, 2025 has been a up and down year, a lot of ups and a lot of downs. But I think the issue around the funding cuts really had an impact in the work that was being done. And you could even see that being manifested in the communities that we would work in, because usually funding that could go to a certain intervention, it's no longer there. So we had to make do with what we had, due to limited funding. So I think that really had an impact in the work that is done, not only by us at CSVR, but also the broader community, since we work with a lot of social justice organizations as well. So the USAID cuts really had a big impact on us, I believe. Yeah.
Thank you so much for those reflections, Lethabo. Perhaps maybe we can move to you, Zanele. What were some of the most significant mental health challenges that emerged in the communities this year? And how did the team perhaps respond to these challenges?
So I'll first speak about the cumulative stress, the grief across organizations, households, communities facing violence, unemployment, and displacement. We normalized brief, structured, evidence-based psychosocial support sessions and warm referrals instead of, promising long-term therapy we couldn't resource. Like Litabo said, 2025 has stressed most of us this year with canding fats. So, we've had to carry, hold space, and maneuver around. But I think most of all was the volume of trauma, the heaviness that we've had to sit with, some of us, and hold space for others. So those are some of the challenges we've had to kind of support individuals, groups, organizations in terms of the violence, unemployment and displacement, and any other, even from our very own, the loss in its different kind of ways, loss of colleagues, those kind of challenges. And like I said, how we responded is really around the structured and evidence-based psychosocial support sessions and warm referrals. We just did not or could not promise even long-term therapy where we knew exactly that we couldn't resource that. I think another part was the isolation and the ruptured support systems. I think with the cutting, funding cuts, we sort of became fractured, fragmented as systems. So we've had to restart community cycles, empowerment cycles, peer support groups, because we believe people heal in relationships. So those are some of the challenges and some of the ways in which I believe we were successful in terms of responding and holding space for ourselves and for others.
I absolutely love that perspective that people heal in communities and people heal in relation to others. That's incredibly important to note. And you guys both mention the significant impact that the cut in funding has had in communities and within the work that you do. Has that shifted any understandings of what trauma and healing is in the work and within the communities? Has it shifted interventions? How has the cut in funding impacted some of your approaches, perhaps?
Atini, much of the work that we do is very much individualized. But due to the funding and the funding gaps, we had to now stretch the work that we do, stretch our intervention. So give it more of a group focus, a more community centered approach to the work that we do. And we've also, through that, through those interventions, we've learned so much about, as Zanele said, the power of healing within the community and not just leaving it to the individual hands, and also how trauma permeates through the community. And it's, yes, it's okay to deal with the person as the individual, but then let's also think about the system that that person belongs to, and how it also is in need of healing and some sort of support that can help it, thrive and become a community that is based on resilience. So although we had to kind of stretch ourselves in terms of the work that we do, make it more collective, but I think it works to our benefit. And perhaps there needed to be that catalyst of the certain funding sources being closed for us to actually realize that, hey, you know what, we are onto a good thing here, because we managed to do a lot of group work. We managed to do a lot of things that we probably would not have been able to do or uh, completely focus on if we were just doing it, if we were just providing psychosocial support for just the commute, just that one person. but when we spread it out, we make sure that, yes, we're spreading it out, but as effectively as we can. So it really helped us to tap into that mechanism that we hadn't really, or we had used it before, but it forced us to kind of look at other ways in which we can provide that psychosocial support in a way that is effective for the communities that we serve.
It's incredibly commendable to hear that, the cut in funding has, quite frankly, encouraged a more creative way and approach to healing within communities. As unfortunate as it is, it did indeed open new doors. So thank you for that. It's powerful to hear how communities are not only surviving, but actively reshaping their understanding of healing as well. It brings us to another important part of the story: the people who hold space. So sometimes we forget that the healers, counselors, and facilitators are also humans, carrying their own histories, their own pain, and their own need to rest. And so in this segment, I want us to maybe focus on us essentially and look more inward at the emotional labor behind MHPSS. MHPSS practitioners often absorb a lot of emotional weight of the work. Some of us talk about vicarious trauma, or that's the operative word, vicarious trauma. And so, how does the team care for itself and prevent burnout or compassion? And maybe a listener out there can sort of learn from you guys as well. Zanele, any insights on this?
So I must say, personally, burnout was real for me this year. The combination of caseloads, funding uncertainty, it's just a risk recipe. But I think I must share that I've learned three things. First was to name whatever it is that I was going through, and acknowledge that, I needed to show up for myself, be present, and acknowledge whatever experience that I was going through, and not as a personal failure, but an occupational hazard. Evidence links chronic stress with compassion fatigue, so organizational fixes, matter, not just self-care. So for me was being present, being there for myself, acknowledging my experiences. And yeah, when I felt I was ready, I then, had the strength to then reach out to a peer colleague, But first for me was acknowledging it, naming exactly what is it that I was feeling, just being there for myself. I think the second one was practicing micro restoration, your 5 minutes breath work, mindfulness, your peer check-ins. Like I said, when I felt I was ready to then reach out to a colleague to actually say, hey, this is where I am, this is what's happening, how are you holding up? It would be then, yes, that conversation, but just reaching out to a colleague, venting if it was venting. But just shouting out to say, I need space, need someone to carry me. Also reflective practices that also really was and is actually an important one, because a lot of times, we get caught up in the busyness, having to meet targets, having to hold space for others, but we often forget to even pause ourselves, breathe, reflect, have that moment of pause, breathe, and try to see if there's a way in which we can just navigate as we move along. So those were some of the things for me. And the last one, maybe if I can share, was also building structures or even utilizing even the support or supportive structures that were present. For example, supervision. for us as practitioners, that is also one of the things that is very important. So supervision, right? Workload boundaries and team debriefs. Those were some of the things that I felt like were important, as much as we were challenged ourselves as an organization. But like I said, where we were able to reach out, to tap into our own little pockets of support, we were able to do that. So that, for me, I could say those are the things that carried me, and I would like to even encourage, because sometimes it's resources that we do not have as organizations and even as communities, but it's important that we establish these structures or systems of support, and it doesn't always have to include money where we need to hire an external person to hold space for us. Sometimes it's really about finding ways to hold space for ourselves, support one another, even if it's just team check-ins or peer check-ins. That I feel like that's what we needed, because even in our engagements with other maybe people that we've held space with, we found that even people have, like I said, this year has been has taken a toll on us. And what I even realized as we continue to do the work was we were so isolated, we're fragmented. So even having to bring people together was just one of the struggles, one of the things that we realized was a challenge, because we've sort of become isolated. But then, like I said, what I've learned and what I even encourage is, when we try to connect as as groups, as people, as colleagues, organizations, that goes a longer way, because when we stay connected, then we are much aware of, okay, where are we, who's where, what kind of support, and what kind of support they need or we need, and what can we do together to support one another and see how we move forward.
I absolutely love the idea of centering connection as a form of healing, and honestly, just as a form of staying connected with others. It's incredibly important. You remind us that when we don't necessarily have the financial resources to go to therapy, we should utilize what is already around us. So thank you so much for those reflections. Litabo, for you, perhaps, what has been one of the most meaningful or transformative experiences for you as a practitioner this year?
I won't lie, there has been a lot. But I think a highlight for me was when I had the opportunity to lead and coordinate the like mental health and psychosocial support activity for the anti-GBV project in GBV hotspots in and around the Western Cape, particularly in Cape Town. Because as you know, Cape Town, police stations in Cape Town have some of the highest rates of gender-based violence cases. So truly, it means having to get down there and work with communities, work with individuals behind the stats, and having to interact with clients either individually or providing psychosocial support in the form of groups, healing circles, as well as interacting with the broader community, particularly in GBV, GBV hotspots such as your Delft and your Mitchell's Plain. And although when you first look at it, you're like, will I be able to do it as a professional? Will I be able to tap into this community's emotional needs? But I believe through preparation, as well as tapping into the community, like what the community actually wants and how they see themselves and the world, it really helps you as a professional to be able to serve them as best as you can. So I think that was a major, major highlight for me, particularly because, as I mentioned earlier, we see the stats on television, we hear about it in the news, but we don't actually take the time to sit down and say, okay, behind 1,000, cases that are opened of GBV, in the Delft community. What does that mean in terms of like the literal numbers and the literal people behind those numbers? And how do the families survive? How do the families cope? How do they see themselves healing from gender-based violence? So I'm happy actually that I was able to contribute to them awakening to the fact that gender-based violence is there, gender-based violence is real, as well as the trauma impacts that follow gender-based violence, and providing them with a platform to heal. I remember the healing circles that we used to do. Many of them had never done healing in terms of being hands-on, doing art, finding other ways in which they can, heal, not just through talking, but also through imagination, through creativity, through talking to one another as community members, as peers, as friends, as neighbors. And I'm happy and I'm appreciative of the fact that I was able to contribute to that, and hopefully helping them to also see that you can heal from the trauma. It will take time, but you will get there. And sometimes you don't need a lot of money or a lot of resources. Sometimes you just need your mind and your willingness to say, I want to get better. I want to heal. So I'm glad that I was able to do that for the community of Delft, the community of Mitchell's Plain, as well as Menenberg as well. Um, so yeah, that's basically my highlight. That's I've learned a lot of lessons from that from leading that project in terms of MHPSS, and it helps to transform me in ways that I believe even 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I'll still, take on those lessons that I learned.
Litabo, thank you so much for sharing that reflective experience and, the work that you do in these communities. You may make it sound easy, but it doesn't, it's not easy at all. And maybe, you can share with us some of those experiences a little bit further. How do you balance professional boundaries with empathy and community connection in such an emotionally charged space?
Um, yes, at times it can get very emotionally charged, and you see people getting very triggered, tears and telling their stories and being very emotional while telling their stories. But I think as a person that works with mental health, you have to kind of remember your guiding principles, the values that we were taught that guide you into doing the intervention work that you do. For example, um, making sure that you always keep things confidential and informing the client or informing that group about that as well, to inform them that, everything that happens here, it will remain here. Everything that is said here, it will remain here. So it gives them as the client or the group, the opportunity to actually be free and be able to talk and express what they feel or the experiences that they've gone through. I think another way in which one was able to kind of maintain boundaries is understanding that the community that you are working with is a community in pain. And although you are working within that community, you also have to remember to take care of yourself, trying not to get too even though it's hard, but trying not to get too emotionally invested. Try to keep a neutral stance in the work that you do. It's not easy though when you hear, particularly when you hear about cases of, a husband beating up his wife, or, a child that was brutally raped. those issues can touch at you at the core. We're not robots. But it's about reminding yourself that, okay, this is this person's story, and I shouldn't take it and make it my own. I should try as much as possible to remain neutral and to act as a sounding board, to practice empathy and be a sounding board to that person, not find myself in a situation where now I heavily, heavily sympathize with that person, but not allowing the person to also see and explore other ways in which they can deal with the situation that they are faced with at the end of the day. Because yes, they can get advice from friends, they can get advice from family members, but that's not what I am there for as a mental health practitioner. I am there as their mirror. I am there as also an alternative voice, not telling them what to do, but allowing them to, or guiding them rather, to find instances to their own answers. I think we were together at Tini when there was this other activity that we needed to do, which was looking at women who had experienced trauma, particularly gender-based violence trauma. And one of the activities, the mental health activities that we did was called Finding Your Personal Inner Symbol. And a lot of the ladies were confused about that. What does symbol mean? Like, what are you talking about? But it was important as the mental health practitioner to remind them that you have a say in your life. And there are certain symbols in the world that you can cling and hold on to when you're feeling broken, when you're feeling unstable, when you're feeling unsteady, and the memories of the trauma are coming at you. Find that symbol and hold on to that symbol. And it was nothing, like there was no way in which we influenced that group to come up with symbols. They came up with symbols on their own, and most of their symbols centered around love, centered around community support, centered around sisterhood, centered around them seeing themselves as bright sparks. And that type of activity is one way in which it helps the person that is going through the trauma to remember that through what I've experienced, yes, I've experienced pain and harshness, and things were bleak then, but my mindset can be focused onto something positive, something that I can lean onto, something like sisterhood, something like love, something like family support, something that I can lean on to. So, yeah, I think it's really important that as much as we are dealing with communities and the painful stories that they tell us, but we also need to also remember that you are, as the mental health professional, you need to remain as neutral as possible and be that person's mirror and sounding board so that they can find the answers themselves and you don't dictate to them what they need to do wrong or what they need to do right.
Thanks for that, Litabo. I remember that experience very vividly. It was truly transformative, even for me. And, thank you for reminding us of the balance between holding others and holding ourselves. It's a powerful thread, I think. And it leads naturally into the bigger picture, So as we close out the year, it's important to look at the legacy of 2025, what 2025 has taught us, what it demanded from us, and what it opened up for the future. Zanele, perhaps more directly to you, looking back at 2025, right? What are some of the lessons has MHPSS program learned about integrating mental health into peace building and gender equality work?
I think some of the lessons, rather, I'd say it's healing and peace they reinforce each other, when people process grief, rebuild trust and reconnect with each other, social cohesion improves, which we believe is a foundation for the prevention of cycles of violence, and in terms of gender responsiveness, community-led approaches we believe they travel the furthest in terms of integrating, mental health into peace building and gender work. Women's cycles, the empowerment cycles that Lita was speaking about, the youth groups, and local facilitators have helped us, collaborating with them, actually holding space and supporting them has actually helped, surface, harm and build that collective coping, collective healing even at a community level. That is work that has that's work actually that many policy papers now even call, central and maybe not even, the peripheral, but now central to, the work that we do. So I would say that, the community-led approaches, that we've used, the spaces that we've created, safe spaces, for these marginalized groups has actually helped us to surface the harm and, help communities build, that collective structures of healing support system and just to empower them and remind them that, they have the power within themselves to heal, to bounce forward. A lot of times they even say bounce back, but bouncing forward, and also the coordination, I think, around the frameworks that we even use to help us do more with less and show impact to even funders. I think that has been also one of the highlights for me, capturing and capturing even the impact of work that we do with the communities. That has also helped us, the frameworks that we've used, that has helped us to even capture that and disseminate that and show to the public again to say these are the powerful stories, the voices that are out there, and that has been empowering. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Zanele, for those reflections. And so maybe you can explain to us a bit further when it comes to CSVR's approach to mental health and healing. What makes it so unique? What makes CSVR's approach to mental health so unique?
Okay. So we are trauma informed and community rooted. So that makes us unique. We combine, say brief psychological interventions with collective spaces, your storytelling, your peer support, and the referrals that are embedded in community protection, community resilience, and gender justice programming. So I think that fits the layered MHPSS pyramid, from basic support, and social networks to focused care, and so it's more accessible for people who won't even have to step into the clinical level. So I think another thing is we also work, intersectorally, linking MHPSS with livelihoods, GBV support, like Litabo has shared the GBV program or project that we've been running, and the legal accompaniment, we also have the advocacy part of the work that we do in the work that we do. Also, like I said, I think that's what's unique is a combination of that, but with the main thing that we are very trauma informed and community rooted. So we in that sense we believe that people heal inside their everyday realities and not apart from them. So I think that's just one thing that is unique about us CSVR, is that we are trauma informed and community rooted, and we just take it very seriously and prioritize, collaborating with communities, giving them the power and, the hope and, giving them a space to even voice out and find a way forward while we also provide the support that is needed.
I absolutely appreciate this multi-layered approach towards healing. It's trauma-informed, as you've said. It's community-rooted. And most importantly, it's really about giving people the power as well. So that's truly commendable. And finally, as we close the year, perhaps Letabo, you can start us off and then Zanele will move to you. What gives you hope future of community healing and mental health in South Africa and beyond? So, what gives you faith and hope to one, continue the work of healing, but also gives you hope knowing that communities will indeed continue to heal by themselves through the help of others, of course?
Yeah. I think for me, the one aspect that is giving me hope is that communities are rising up to that realization that mental health, my mental health, our mental health matters, and the state of it matters as well. So it's been amazing to see people becoming conscious of that and taking steps towards trying to find ways in which they can improve their mental health state. And not only in communities, but also funders as well are realizing the importance of saying, okay, you can have a brilliant proposal that is looking, or rather a brilliant intervention plan that is looking at awareness raising for example, let's say for gender-based violence. But there has to be an element of holding gender-based violence survivors, for example, or even though, yes, transitional justice is an important thing to think about, but we also need to look at how do we integrate mental health into that. So it's good to see that a lot of different stakeholders in our community are waking up to that fact that, you know what, actually, for our interventions to become more effective, we need to also look at the behavioral factors. We need to look at the attitudinal factors. We need to look at the mental health factors of it all for that intervention to remain sustainable in the long run. Long after we have left, long after we have done our evaluations and we have wrapped things up, but the community is the one that's going to be left holding on to the interventions that we have introduced. So it gives me hope. I'm hopeful that as more people wake up to the fact that their mental health matters, they will also, and they are doing that as we speak. They are, reaching out for support, wanting referrals to psychosocial support institutions that we work with. And it's a sign of positivity that we are moving towards a future where we will have honest and open discussions, not only about the physical health, but also about our emotions and, without judgment, without any stigma, but with an understanding that it affects us all. And it's important that we talk about it and we find ways to heal ourselves.
Yes, thank you so much to both of you for your honesty and for your wisdom and the work that you do continuously. And to our listeners, thank you for sharing this reflective space with us. If there's any one thing that this conversation reminds us, it's that healing is not linear. It's back and forth, it's precarious, and sometimes it's about uncertainty, but it's important that we do it within the midst of that uncertainty. This conversation has truly reminded me that it's a collective journey. One we take step by step, moment by moment, side by side. As we go into 2026, may we carry with us the resilience we witnessed, the lessons we have learned, and the renewed commitment to caring for ourselves and our communities. Until next time, this is Unbound Voices by CSVR. Thank you so much for listening.